Hello and welcome to Sitter's Baked Goods. Today we're going to be doing week 2 of the maple syrup crew order, which is going to be 2 whole wheat bread, 2 rye bread, 1 meat pie, and a lemon square. It's going to be a bit smaller than last time, but let's get into it. I have my onions cut. I'm about to do my garlic. This is the perfect time to roast your spices. So get your 3 main spices in here. Roast it. By the time this is done roasting, you'll be done your garlic, and you can put your oil in and start your sweating of your onions and garlic. Once that starts sweating, I'm going to start peeling potatoes, carrots, and celery, chopping them up. By that time, they'll be done sweating, and I can pour them in, and then we can get started on our meat once we get it simmering with our milk. Let's get our garlic done. Now today I'm going to be making the pie first, moving into the lemon squares, and then finally into our bread. I'm doing it this way because I want to make sure that I get this pie in first, because it takes an hour, which gives me plenty of time to start prepping other things. So while it bakes, I'll be able to get the bottom for my lemon squares done. Then I'll be able to get my dough kneaded and proofing. By the time the pie is out, I can throw the bottom in, take it out, put the curd on, finish it up. By the time that's done, the bread, or one of the breads at least, whether it's rye or brown bread, should be ready to be finished proofing. When I take out the lemon squares, I'll put those in, and I'll try and time it out so that once those 2 loaves of bread come out, the next 2 loaves can go in. Remember, when you're doing big orders like this, you need to be planning your day out so that you know exactly what's going in, how you're going to do it, so that you don't waste any time. So, just roasted it. Make sure you put your oil in now. And then add in your garlic and onions. Make sure you get all of it in there. If you don't get every last bit on this go around, it's not the end of the world, because you are going to be putting more vegetables in this bowl and you can scrape them out again. But once this starts sweating, we're going to finish sweating, add in our rest of our vegetables, start on the meat, let this simmer while we're doing the meat. Once all that's done, we'll pour it all back into the same bowl, let it cool down, roll out our pie dough, and then finish her up. Make sure you chop up your celery and carrot first so that the potatoes don't brown after cutting them. Nice big chunks. As you get closer to the end where it's bigger, you just make them slightly smaller. Pour this in. With this piece, you're going to want to go big chunks so that they don't cook as fast as the rest. And then with this one, you're going to want to go small. You can hear that the onions are starting to sizzle. That's good. We want to hear that. So that means they're going to be done fairly soon, so we can start on our potatoes. Now, the thing you can do with the potatoes is, if you put them in your bowl, make sure you're not touching anything, because you don't want... Actually, we won't do it on our bowl. We don't want to get any dirt on our stuff. You can weigh it out and try and figure out which ones would get closest after I peel them. So these 2, after peeling, will probably be the exact amount I need. So remember, you're going to lose some weight. So get about 200 grams of potatoes with the skin before you put it in. Those onions and garlic are almost done, so we gotta hurry up. So make sure you cut decent sized pieces. If you're worried about timing because you're going slow or whatever, just put the potatoes in water, then start sweating your onions, because if you're going too slow, you might burn your onions, and then those aren't going to be good anymore. But when you put the potatoes in water, they won't brown anymore, and then you have all the time in the world to get this done. Luckily for me, I'm quick enough to do it at the same time so I don't have to wait. Gives me a little speed bonus. Okay, all my vegetables are ready now. Can now move over here. These are basically done. So it's time to add in our vegetables. Move everything in. Make sure you get everything this time. Don't leave anything in there. Just stir these up so that they're nice and spread out. Then we're going to add our milk. Make sure you scrape all your milk in. Now you'll notice I didn't put the bay leaf in yet. That's because the bay leaf doesn't really do anything until the liquid's in. So I'll add it in now. And then just make sure that it's under some liquid. And let this simmer till everything's just about done. And when it's just about done, you want to take it off, because remember, this is going into the oven again, which will finish cooking it and make it at the exact one you want. So if you want it mushy, get it slightly soft, not mushy yet. Then once you put it in the oven, it'll get to mushy. If you want slightly soft, get it to slightly medium, etc., etc. So while this simmers, we're going to season it at the end, and then we're going to move on to our meat. If you see the oil, it moves very quickly now. It's very runny. That's how you know that your oil's hot enough for your meat. I have pre-mixed stuff that I did the other day. You can pour it directly on. That's what you want to hear, that nice. You're going to want to flatten it out so that we get more browning. Once it's done browning on that side, we'll flip it, break it up, season it. By that time, I can pour it into my bowl. Then this soup or stew will be basically done, and I can put them together at that point. But don't flip it too early, because if you flip it now, it'll just be gray, and there's no flavor in gray. That's why I leave it as a big thing, because as you can see, I got brown everywhere, which got a nice color. Then it'll get a nice color on the other side. When I break it up, it'll then cook all the way through without losing too much moisture. I'm trying to keep as much moisture as possible. Okay, now that our soup and our meat is done, I'm gonna pour the meat. There's a little bit more liquid than last time, but still an acceptable amount. Any more than this and you're gonna want to drain some off. We don't want this to be too oily. And actually, this little bit right here, I'm gonna take out so that it's not too oily. Now remember, find that leaf. This is wood. We don't want this in our stuff. We're gonna take this off, pour it in. Make sure you've seasoned it and you've liked what it tastes like before doing this. Then we're just going to mix it up again. Let it cool down. Let it lose some of that moisture. While this is cooling down and losing its moisture, we're going to work on our pie shell. By the time we're done rolling it out and all that stuff, this should be cool enough to put it in. We'll start our oven and get working. Just like last time, a third of it's for a top. Move this off to the side. Put some flour down. Try and form it into more of a circle. And start rolling it up. Now this was in the freezer, just like I showed last week. I froze a bunch, so I don't have to make a whole bunch every single time. So, to make sure that it's nice and pliable, you want to put it into the fridge the day before. That gives it all day to warm up to a nice nice temperature to be able to work with. If you just take it out of the freezer, you're gonna have a terrible time. It's gonna be way too hard. You'll never be able to move it. It also helps if you make the dough thinner when you freeze it, so that it thaws quicker. So, for example, if I had this thin, I could probably take it out at the beginning of the day and be able to use it by the end of the day. Twice as thick, I'd have to take it out the day before, which is what I had it at. And any thinner could be hours. So if you want to make it so that it's easier and you can do it right away, you don't have to worry about taking it out the day before, make sure you put it in super thin to begin with. Fix these cracks as they form so that they don't get huge. And we'll come back when this is fully rolled out. There we are. Put your dough down. Oh, perfect. So we'll put this off to the side. Roll this onto our rolling pin. Actually, this is what I want to be on the top. This is looks a lot nicer, and will be a lot nicer to seal the bottom. So let's just make sure we can roll this nicely. Here we are. It's a bit annoying with the tin, but if you go slow, take your time, you can do it easily. Okay. Make sure you lift up as you put it in so you don't cause any tearing to happen. There we are. We're going to cut this around. This is perfect length right here. So follow that line. Cut around as I go. Make sure you obviously have some extra lip so that you can crimp it later on. If you have a bigger lip than this, then like a lip like this big, you won't need to worry about it. But if you don't, you need to make sure you have some extra dough to make it easier on yourself. There we are. There's our bottom. Just make sure one last go around. Perfect. We'll start on the top now. Forming a nice little circle. Start rolling. The reason why I'm doing the top before I pour into here is because I need to let it have a bit more time to cool down. I just checked it, still a bit hot. I don't want it wrecking any of the butter inside our dough, so we want to let it go for a little bit. I will turn on the oven real quick so that by the time we're done, it'll be preheated, ready to go. I'm thinking about making a video about how I plan my days and show you guys how to do it so that it's easier for you guys and that you know how to decide what to start with and figure out what style you want to do. Do you want to do the style where you go up in heat or down in heat? What I mean by that is when I like to go up in heat, so I always start on the things that bake at the lower temperature with reason. Like for example, this pie is 350, but the lemon squares 325. That's not too much of a difference, but I need the hour time from the pie, so I'm going to start with the pie even though it's higher, and then I work my way up. So I go pie, lemon squares, bread at the end. The other reason I do this is depending on what I'm making, like for example I'm making pie, bread, and lemon squares, how much time do I need to proof and things like that. With the pie giving me that hour to play around with, it's making it a lot easier for me to do the bread nicely rather than rush it and then be rushing with the pie and rushing with everything. The pie gives me a nice calm, I get it done in the same amount of time, I just have to do the pie first. Because imagine bread coming out in 25 minutes and having to do exactly what I just did now with this pie, cooking the vegetables, cooking the meat, letting them cool, all that while this 25 minutes. It's gonna make you too stressed out. It could easily cause you to make mistakes. We don't want any mistakes on your products. So I'm probably gonna make a video later on of just how I plan my day and maybe how I do my costing as well, so that you guys understand how to start your business rather than just learning baked goods. Because that is the goal of this channel, to make you guys understand how to start your business, your bakery business, rather than just baking. So this is ready to go. The meat and vegetables should be done. So I'm going to pour them in. Now the reason why I'm trying to keep as much moisture with the meat as possible and with the milk and all that stuff is because it's so easy to take out moisture by just draining it out, but it's harder and harder to put more moisture in. So if I need to, I can always get rid of moisture, and if I don't, I can just pour it out. The other beauty about baking on the same day, which does help with the product, is you can have more moisture on the day. Versus the last time I made this, I had to put slightly less moisture because it was going to sit in the fridge and it could seep easily through your dough by that stage, and you don't want any of that. Now I can feel that this dough bounced back a little bit, so I'm just going to quickly roll it out a tad bit more so that it's nice and thin, so we don't have too huge of a crust on top. Now this is where I put all those extra pieces, so that's going to be our bottom, so you don't have to see it. Make sure you cut, follow the line that you made with your other one. Careful not to cut it smaller. Make it easier for yourself. Cut extra pieces off just like that. Sadly, these pieces again will have to be thrown out because I've worked with them too much, especially today. Last week I didn't work with them too hard, so I probably could have used them again. But this time around I did work them pretty hard, so I don't want to be working them one more time. Sadly, this is going to be thrown out. Let's crimp them. But first, we want to seal this nicely. Make sure you have a nice circle in the middle. That's going to puff up so that it looks nicer. Like this looks bigger when this part is puffed up rather than this part. You don't want to have a flat pie. Now you don't have to do a crazy good job of pinching it together right on the first go around because you are going to crimp. So remember, 2 fingers, thumb, push, push. You'll notice last time I had a lot more dough here and it was very thick. The syrup crew told me that, and I gonna adjust to make sure that I don't put as much dough there, so they don't just at the end of eating their pie have a just huge lump of dough. Well, it wouldn't be a lump, it'd be nice flaky dough, but when there's nothing else going with it, like there'd be no meat, no vegetables with the little crust here, it's not the most pleasant of things. So I'm going to try and adjust that, put less dough, so that that piece is... Oh, oven's good. See, perfect timing. All I have to do is egg wash this. It's going in. This is the beauty about having a huge group of people to give you feedback, is you get decent results and improvements quickly. So let me just grab my knife. Make our nice little design. And just like last time, I made not as nice as a star as I wanted. This time, I'm gonna work harder on it. So if you are gonna start your business, it'd be awesome if you have a large group of people that will support you by buying products and giving you nice feedback, because then you can make huge leaps and bounds on your products for the future. Because once you get into it and you're serving hundreds and hundreds of customers, you won't be able to get as much feedback as you would think, because you can't talk to 100 people. But if you talk to a nice variety of about 20 people and you know them personally and they know that you're looking for good results, they can tell you exactly what you need to help and improve on. Let me just egg wash this. I am going to put it on a pan, not because I think it's going to leak or anything like that, but because with this tin it's very flimsy and doesn't have a super strong base to it, versus like a glass or metal pan, pie tin. But with this pan underneath it, gives me a lot safer entering and exiting the oven. Plus, it helps with an even coating of heat, because it's going to make sure that when you take it out, that once this cools, which it will cool faster than this, that helps it cool down at a nice even temperature everywhere and doesn't ruin anything. Again, make sure you're very careful. You get into these little cracks. Be very careful, you don't want to make scrambled eggs. I know I say it a bunch of times, but trust me, I've done it before. It's not pretty. So let's quickly throw this in the oven and we'll start on our other things. I actually was wrong about the lemon squares. They're 350 as well. So it's actually perfect that I did the pie first, because the pie doesn't really matter if you open the door too many times. You just need to make sure that you're not just leaving the door open, which makes it perfect because I can do the whole lemon squares while the pie is baking, because I'm only going to open it once, throw the bottom in, take it out, put the top on top, finish it. That's not going to do any damage to our pie, and we can have both products finished right at the same time, and that will make sure that our day is cut by like 40 minutes, which if that's your employees, 40 minutes is like $10 of wages. Now, like, you don't want to be cutting too many wages, but those 40 minutes can be spent on making more products. So it's a win-win situation. So let's get on to our lemon squares then. Sugar and flour first, with a little bit of salt. Always salt anything, no matter what it is, bread, pastries, cakes, anything. Even if it's just a pinch, it makes a whole lot of difference. Now for the flour, I know it's a big bag, but you can go slow. If you don't feel like lifting it like this, use a cup or any real spoon, bowl even, whatever you want. Just make sure that you don't overfill it. Okay, now all our dry ingredients are in together. Just mix them up a bit before we put in our flour, or sorry, not our flour, our butter. We want to do this to make sure that our butter isn't just mixing with sugar or just mixing with flour. You want it to be mixing with everything evenly. Okay. Sorry for the sunrise, but again, I am trying to fix the lighting, but until I can get that done, you're gonna have to suffer with me. This is okay. We're gonna go for about that size of pieces. It's okay if they break up into smaller pieces. I just break them up into these pieces because they're manageable. And don't be too worried about using this. Like, why waste a cutting board to get dirty if you're going to, like, it's not dirtying anything. You don't have to worry too much. I'm almost done. So close. Try not to shave too much like this, because these are small pieces and might blend in too much. Okay, so that's all our butter. We'll rub it in. By the way, if you have a paddle, you can do the rubbing in with a paddle, or if you have a food processor, you can do the rubbing in with a food processor if you're doing big batches. I'm only doing one today, so I'm just going to use my hands, but again, I'm trying to show you what it's going to be like at a bakery. You're going to be doing 20 of these, 20 dozen, etc., however many you're going to do. You won't be doing that by hand, you're going to be doing it with a machine. Remember, fingers only. That's what makes a machine a lot better, is a machine is always cold. Now, to make sure that the machine is actually cold, because obviously if you're letting the machine run all day, the machine will get warmer and warmer. You might want to think about doing this first thing in the morning, or have specific machines for it, so that no matter what you're doing, you can just pull out that specific machine, that food processor. That's why I would suggest using food processor. It's because you won't be using a food processor for bread, which then, if you're doing a whole bunch of breads in the morning, that mixer is now super hot. You put this in and it's not going to rub in as nicely as you'd want, because it's going to melt the butter. So just little ideas that you got to think about when you're designing your kitchen and when you're figuring out how you're going to lay out your day. Remember, put about 2/3, by the way, this is what you want, about 2/3 of the mixture as your bottom and the last third as your top. The bottom's a lot more important because that's what you need for most of your strength, and that little top is just to make sure that you can ship it around the world. Now again, if you're not shipping, you might as well put all this on the bottom and then just have everything else on the top. But let's make sure you weigh it too, so that you know you're not doing too much. Okay, so I'm going to leave this for the top. Spread this around. Now remember, this parchment paper is just to lift it out. It doesn't need to be the exact size. It does help if it is, but if it's just under the right size, it's going to work perfectly fine. So make sure that you got a nice flat base. You don't want to have bumps everywhere, because imagine eating only this crust and no lemon. Your customer will be pissed, won't be happy, won't come back. They'll go somewhere else. So this is perfectly fine and the right temperature for the oven. So I'm going to throw this in, take it out once it's done, put the curd in, then our top, put it back in. Both the pie and this should finish right around the same time because of that. We're gonna quickly get started on our brown bread. So yeast first. We're making 2 loaves, remember? Flour next. Pure whole wheat. I'm gonna be using the mixers to make sure it's easy and the products come out quick so that everything is timed out perfectly. If I did it by hand, I'd be too slow. I'd just run out of time after taking out the pie and stuff. Wow, that was absolutely perfect. Perfect amount. Perfect. Amazing. Didn't think that would happen. Put 200 with our salt. Actually, we'll go to 300. Just makes it easier. So, get our sugar in here, which will be both regular sugar and molasses. I'm using molasses just a little bit to get that little bit of extra flavor, and then just sugar to feed it. Sugar. Perfect. Now, remember we already put 300 water in there, which leaves us with 450 water left. Make sure you mix this up so the molasses doesn't stick on the bottom. If I wasn't using molasses and I was just using pure sugar, I'd put the sugar in with our flour because we don't need it to dissolve into our water. But the molasses itself will stick all over the place, and it's way better to be putting it in our water so you make sure you get the right amount in. So now you can pour your liquid into your flour. You can use this to mix that. And then we're gonna do our butter. A quick, easy way to save on dishes. If you have a small amount of butter left, you can quickly just do that. Cut whatever you need onto it. Then you're not dirtying anything. And because this butter on the side here doesn't need all of the paper, you might as well use it to your advantage. Before I continue with that brown bread, this timer went off, so take it out. Again, make sure your weigh scale can handle the heat, or go by volume, because if you're putting heat on this, it might mess up with the electronics unless you have a decent weigh scale. So let's put on our curd. Finish 1 jar. Make sure to get all of it out of there. Move on to your next jar. Then we'll spread this around once I clean up. Also remember, no matter how strong your weigh scale is, that the more heat to it, the more damage that could happen. So make sure once you're done weighing, you get it off as quick as possible so you don't do any damage. Even if you know that it's a strong weigh scale and nothing should happen, you don't want to take any risks for no reason, right? So quickly take that off. If you got one of these offset spatulas, they are miracle workers. They flatten things so much nicer than your spatula or your pan, or sorry, not your pan, your knives. So make sure you get one. It's a great investment. And easy as that. Everything's level. I'm gonna put the top on, throw it back in the oven. Make sure you put all this on and level it out nicely. We don't want any area bigger than the rest. Make your customers happy. And don't press too hard down onto it. You don't want to mix this with your curd. Just like last time I've made this. If you start mixing the top, any flour with your curd, you'll start losing more and more of that lemon taste because the flour cuts it. And then all you're gonna taste is a slightly lemony shortbread versus lemon squares. This is supposed to be lemon, so make sure you don't press too hard on it. We'll just throw this in the oven. Now with the lemon squares out of the way, let's start our brown bread. Make sure that you're just making it mix together, then adding in the salt water and your butter. Both butter and salt kill yeast, so you don't want to be putting it in right away. You want to let the yeast start working, then add it in. So the yeast will be starting to work right about now, and I'll add in our water with salt. Make sure there's no salt in afterwards. Once this starts to mix in more, I'll add in the butter, so we'll come back then. Now it's time to add in our butter. Just throw little chunks at a time. Be very careful, even though this is a small one, even though this is a small mixer, it is very dangerous with the hook. If your hands are in there, you might not lose it like with my big boy one, but you definitely are going to get hurt very badly. So if you are scared, just throw a little bit like that at a time. And we'll just let it go until it's fully formed. Now that it's formed a ball, I'm going to turn up the speed and we're going to let it go for 8 to 10 minutes. I know you probably can see a bit of the butter that's not mixed in yet. When you turn up the speed, that'll all be taken care of. After that's done, we're going to let it proof. After it's done proofing, the pie and the lemon square should be done and taken out. While the oven heats up to the temperature that these brown bread need, we'll proof it the second time, and that will be put in right when the oven is heated up again. So let's turn this up. Ten minutes later, this dough is nice and kneaded. I can feel that it's nice and tight on the gluten, which is perfect, exactly what I want. Now we're just going to let it proof. While it proofs, I'm going to be taking the pie and lemon squares out, and I'm going to start onto the rye. Now obviously I can't use this same mixer because I'm using this bowl to proof in, but that's the benefit of having two mixing bowls. Not mixing bowls, mixers. So while that proofs and stuff, let's get onto our rye bread. Get our sugar in and our salt. And we'll split the water up. So 100 grams with our salt and 400 with our sugar. There we go. Now that our liquids are all done, we're gonna move on to our dry ingredients. I made this sponge the other day, just like how we make all their other sponges. Just put a little bit of yeast, our flour and water together, leave it for a whole day. So we're gonna put our yeast, put in our flour. Whoa. Our 12 grain. Careful when you're using bags like this. You don't want to put too much in. Now with all the flour and stuff in here, it makes it a lot easier to scrape that sponge into our mixing bowl. So make sure you get everything out and in there. Have it turned off when you add in your stuff. Add in your sugar water. Now there is a bit left, I messed up, so we'll put our salt water in there so we can make sure we get everything. But we'll turn this on, make sure it's on one, turn it on, let it start going. Once it's halfway mixed, we'll add in our salt water. Now that it's formed a dough, just about, we're gonna turn it off. Speed 2, and let it go for 8 minutes. Just took out our pie and our lemon squares. Looking pretty good. Let them cool off to the side. Obviously you can hear the rye bread going in the background. The brown bread's just about time to finish proofing, punch it down, and put it into our loaf pans to proof. And we'll move on to that next. My rye bread is now just proofing. This doubled in size so I can finish up the brown bread. When the brown bread is done proofing, the rye bread will be going in to the second proofing stage. Once this brown bread is done baking, that rye bread should be done completely. So hopefully I've timed this out perfectly to make it nice and quick. Ooh. So, just like before, when we do 2 loaves, weigh it out, because it changes depending on how much flour you use and stuff to knead it. So, 2,076, divide that by 2, 1,038. When you're using a loaf pan, you don't have to worry so much about these ends because it's just going to bake against the wall and can't explode. So if you just focus on the top, making sure that the top is nice, you can easily just do this, throw her in, and be good to go. Now, I'm going to let that rest for 2 seconds while I do this one, because I do want to press it so that it hits all the corners. So let it rest for 2 seconds, just to make sure that I can push it all the way in, so that it's nicely spread out through the whole thing. Then we're going to use our damp towel. Make sure you use warm water to let it proof. So once it's done proofing, we'll throw them in. After these puff up and are ready for the oven, our rye bread should be good to go to punch down and form into our loaves. Once these come out of the oven, our rye bread should be just a bit longer, and we'll throw them in right away. Our rye bread has doubled in size. Our brown bread is just about ready to be put in the oven. So by the time I'm done forming this dough, that should all be ready to go, and once those brown bread are done, the rye bread can go in. So just like the brown bread, I'm gonna weigh it up. See, this time it's 2,030 instead of last time where it was 2006, I think. So this time it's slightly different. I'm gonna add 15 grams, so it's gonna be 1,015. That should be good. Get it nice and kneaded again. Now we have a ball. We don't want a ball, we want to have it into a loaf shape. So let's use some flour, stretch it out a bit. There's one. Need the next one. Make sure that bottom is nice and formed so that it doesn't explode out the sides. Grab my knife. No hesitation, remember? Any hesitation and it's gonna mess it up. Let me just grab a cloth for that. We'll just cover this with a damp towel while it proofs. I just took this off of the brown bread because I'm about to throw those brown bread in. Here's our brown bread. I'm just going to brush a bit of water on and throw them in the oven. Here's our nice 2 brown bread loaves. Sounds hollow. Careful with these are hot. Okay, that one's not popping out, but it's been in there the same amount as this one, so it should be definitely done. I'm gonna go quickly pop in the rye bread, and we're almost done. While the rye bread's cooking, I might as well cut this up. Cut all the ends off. Move it to make it easier for yourself. Don't try and do awkward cuts. You'll just mess it up. Okay, so cut these into little pieces. Maybe give them out as samplers or just give them to your employees. And make sure you taste this to make sure that you know it's good. We're going to cut this into 16 pieces. So, 4 by 4. Use a ruler if you're not confident in your cut. Make sure you have nice and even cuts. Now, Maple Syrup Crew is only going to get 12 of these. The other 4 are for me to taste test and to get some more feedback from a few people around where I am. So we're going to leave these 4 to the side, give this to the Maple Crew. We're almost done today. Okay, rye bread is out. Got a nice dark crust, which is good. Sounds hollow, so it's fully cooked. Now I just need to let things rest off to the side. I'm going to lay out everything so you can see everything that I've made today. That is going to go to the maple syrup bush. After showing you and talking about it for a little bit, I'm going to take a picture and we're finished finally. Long day. So here's everything. A lot of bread this week and a little bit of other pastry stuff. I had a little bit too much liquid in the pie and it leaked out a bit, but no big panic. Everything looks good. Everything's gonna taste good. Lemon squares, perfect timing, perfect looks, and I've already tasted one. Tastes great. Brown bread turned out pretty good. 2 nice loaves, and of course, the beautiful dark rye. Perfect. So, we're finally done. This is the second week for Maple Syrup Crew. We'll see what they get on the third week. So this is how they turned out. Sorry for the dull photo, but you got to see in the video that everything's looking great. It's going to be a nice gift to the bush. I focused more on breads this week because they needed some nice items for sandwiches and lunch and stuff like that, and focus a little bit less on the pastry side of things. That's why I did meat pies instead of the other pies. Next week's going to be a bunch of pies. I think I'm going to do 2 meat pies, a blueberry pie, and an apple pie. And maybe I'll throw in another treat there, so we'll see what I do, but I'm thinking lemon squares. If you've liked this video, please like and subscribe. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I even have my own website. Thank you, and have a nice day.